You sit there thinking your silence should be safe. You do not speak first. You do not announce yourself. You do not compete for attention. And yet, the room already knows you are there. Before you say a word, people adjust. Someone becomes unusually polite. Someone becomes strangely nervous. Someone suddenly starts talking too much, filling the air as if to prevent something from being heard. Someone looks at you with a softness that feels like recognition, and someone else looks at you with irritation that does not fit the moment, as if you have already done something to them, though you have not touched them at all. And you, perhaps, have carried this for years without language for it. You have felt it as a curse at times. You have asked yourself in private, almost with shame, why do they react to me like this? I didn't do anything. I was just present for me. Yes, presence. This is the central mystery of the title you brought to me. The rare aura of the integrated empath, why people feel you before you speak. Because you must understand something from the beginning. What people feel from you is rarely you as a personality. They are not reacting to your words, your opinions, your charm, your status. Many times they are reacting to something far older and far deeper, something archetypal, something unconscious in them that your presence has stirred awake. You may think you are walking into a room, but psychologically, something else is happening. The room is walking into itself through you. And this is not sentimental. It is not a compliment. It is not a gift you should romanticize. It can be dangerous to your relationships, dangerous to your identity, dangerous to your fate if you do not understand what is happening behind the curtain. Because an integrated empath does not merely sense the atmosphere. An integrated empath becomes atmosphere. And the psyche of the other person, especially the psyche of the unintegrated, cannot remain calm in such weather. So let us go slowly. Let us take this apart as one would take apart a dream without rushing to moral conclusions, without decorating it with spiritual slogans, and without allowing the ego to pretend this is only about energy. I don't to will. In Jungian terms, what you are experiencing is the psychological effect of integration, the quiet, coherent presence that results when a person has begun, perhaps without even realizing it, to withdraw projections, to reconcile inner opposites, to face shadow material, to soften the persona, to make contact with the anima or animus, and to stop fleeing the unconscious. That process changes a human being in a way that cannot be faked. And the world, especially people who still live inside masks, feels it immediately. That is why they feel you before you speak. Not because you are trying to impress them, but because you no longer need them to confirm your existence, and nothing unsettles the unintegrated psyche more than meeting someone who is no longer begging for approval. You see, most people enter social life like actors entering a stage. They carry a script called the persona, an identity shaped to be acceptable. The persona has rules. It knows how to smile, how to flatter, how to hide envy, how to pretend to listen, how to appear confident while inwardly collapsing. And because most people are trapped in this performance, they unconsciously expect everyone else to perform too. But then you walk in, and something in you is not performing. It is not that you are rude, not that you are cold, but the usual social bargaining is missing. The subtle desperation is absent. The hungry glance toward approval is absent. The unconscious pleading, please accept me, please see me, please validate me is absent, and immediately the other person's psyche begins to tremble, because your presence threatens their entire economy of masks. They may not say this. Of course, they may not even know it consciously, but they feel it as discomfort, fascination, hostility, attraction, suspicion. Their body reacts, their voice changes. They feel you. Now, listen closely. The integrated empath does not have an aura like a decorative halo. Rather, the integrated empath has become less fragmented, and psychological fragmentation leaks. It leaks through contradictions, through forced smiles, through nervous speech, through fake confidence. Fragmentation leaks as noise. Most people are loud because they are split inside. Integration, however, produces a different kind of field, coherence, and coherence is felt like gravity. That is the rare aura. It is not a performance. It is an inner alignment that the nervous system of another person detects before their intellect can interpret it. And this is where danger begins. Because when people cannot interpret something consciously, they interpret it unconsciously. They use projection. Projection is not merely a psychological concept, it is the oldest form of perception. It is how the unconscious sees the world. When a person cannot own something in themselves, beauty, rage, ambition, emptiness, tenderness, cruelty, they push it outward, and then they see it out there in others, and the integrated empath becomes an ideal screen for projection because you are sensitive enough to perceive the projection and quiet enough not to disrupt it. So people begin to cast roles onto you before you speak. One person meets you and feels judged because you mirror their hidden guilt. Another meets you and feels adored because you awaken their abandoned longing. Another meets you and feels inferior because your calm exposes their inner chaos. Another meets you and feels aroused not sexually necessarily, but psychically because your integration evokes the archetype of the beloved, the guide, the forbidden sanctuary. Do you understand what I am saying? You are not merely a person to them. You become a symbolic object in their psychic theater. And this is why your life may have felt strangely fated, why people enter it with intensity, attach quickly, resist you irrationally, confess too soon, hate you too deeply, or love you too eagerly. It is not always about you. It is about what you awaken. But now here is the cruel twist. Empaths who are not integrated suffer this. They are wounded by it. They absorb it. They become confused, guilty, exhausted. They think their sensitivity is weakness. The integrated empath is different. The integrated empath feels these projections but does not swallow them. And this is why you begin to radiate something rare. Because you have learned, consciously or unconsciously, the art of not becoming possessed by what others throw onto you. Possession, this is important. Many people think the empath's problem is simply being too nice. No, that is childish. The empath's real danger is psychic possession, becoming taken over by other people's unconscious contents. When you are young, you feel someone's sadness and it becomes your sadness. You feel their anger and it becomes your guilt. You feel their emptiness and it becomes your responsibility. You feel their longing and it becomes your mission. That is not empathy, that is possession. Empathy is perception with boundaries. Integration is empathy with sovereignty. And sovereignty is precisely what others feel in you before you speak. Because most people do not feel sovereign, they feel managed by their complexes. A complex, you see, is like an autonomous personality inside the psyche, an emotionally charged cluster of images and memories. A mother complex, a father complex, an abandonment complex, a humiliation complex, a power complex, a savior complex. Most people believe they are one person, but in truth, they are a crowd. And the crowd panics when it meets a person who has begun to become one. You enter the room and your coherence presses against their multiplicity. It does not accuse them with words, but the effect is the same. It exposes the inner fragmentation they have been trying to forget. So yes, people feel you before you speak, but I must tell you the shadow of this phenomenon. When people cannot tolerate what you awaken, they will try to destroy it, domesticate it, or seduce it into their control. This is why integrated empaths often become targets in subtle wars, relational wars, power games, emotional sabotage. The integrated empath does not even seek power, but power seeks them because their presence becomes an unconscious threat to those who live by manipulation. You may have noticed this. The more integrated you become, the less you can be controlled through guilt, and those who once relied on guilt to bind you feel it as a loss of control. They grow restless, they accuse you of changing, they say you are cold, they say you are selfish, they say you think you are better than others. This is not personal. It is the panic of a psyche losing its leash on you, because your integration breaks certain contracts. There is, I assure you, a hidden contract that many people expect the empath to sign. You will remain emotionally available, endlessly forgiving, and always explain yourself. You will remain readable, you will remain soft, you will remain open, you will remain a container for what I cannot hold in myself. When you integrate, you tear this contract without drama, and the other person, if unexamined, experiences that as betrayal. So your aura becomes rare, yes, but also dangerous, because it forces choice. Either the other person evolves, or they attack the thing they cannot evolve toward. Now I want you to feel the depth of what I mean, not intellectually, psychologically. Let us enter an image. Imagine an ancient mirror, large, heavy, almost like a door. This mirror does not merely reflect your face, it reflects your inner life. You stand in front of it and you see not only yourself, but also the things you have buried, your grief, your envy, your longing, your cruelty, your sacred rage, your tenderness, your shame. Most people run from such a mirror. They cover it, they turn it to the wall, they break it, but you have been forced toward it, perhaps through suffering, perhaps through heartbreak, perhaps through betrayal, perhaps through exhaustion, Something in life took you by the hand and dragged you toward the mirror you did not ask for, and you began to look. You began to see the shadow, not the shadow as an aesthetic, not the shadow as a trend, but the shadow as the living truth of what you did not want to be. And in that looking, you began to integrate. Now, when you enter a room, you carry that mirror invisibly. You do not aim it at anyone. You do not accuse. You do not preach. But the psyche of the other person senses the mirror. They feel exposed without knowing why, and their reaction reveals their soul. The integrated empath becomes an unconscious diagnostic instrument, not because you judge, but because you reveal, and revelation feels like danger to those who survive by concealment. This is why some people are drawn to you like moths to flame. And yes, we must speak of flame as a symbol. Fire is one of the oldest symbols of transformation. The alchemists called it the agent of change. Fire burns away what is false. It forces essence to appear. It is not nice. It is not gentle. It is sacred. Yes, but it devours. Integration is a kind of inner fire. Not a performance of spiritual purity, but a burning away of illusion. That is why your aura feels rare. You are not better and cooled. You are simply less available for unconscious games. And this can make you lonely. Because many relationships were never relationships, they were exchanges of unconscious roles. You were the healer. They were the wounded. You were the forgiver, they were the offender. You were the listener, they were the endlessly dramatic voice. You were the lighthouse, they were the ship that refused to learn navigation. When you integrate, you stop accepting these roles, and what remains, sometimes silence, sometimes distance, sometimes a smaller circle, but a truer life. Now I want to introduce the first dream vignette, because nothing reveals these dynamics more clearly than dreams. You may dream something like this. You are walking through an old house. The hallway is narrow, dim. On the walls are portraits of people you do not recognize, yet you feel they are family. You reach a locked door at the end. The lock is strange, ornate, almost alive. You try keys, none work. Finally, you press your palm to the door, and the door opens not outward, but inward, as if swallowing you. Inside is a room with a pool of dark water. The water is perfectly still, like black glass. Above it hangs a single lamp, weak and flickering. You kneel and look into the water, expecting reflection, but instead of your face, you see the faces of other people. People you know in waking life looking up at you from beneath the surface. Their mouths moving as if speaking, but you cannot hear. And then you realize something terrifying. They are not under the water. They are in the water, as if the water is their unconscious, and you are seeing them as they truly are, submerged, half living, half drowning. And the moment you realize this, the water begins to ripple. A shape moves beneath it, something long, something serpentine. A snake, not attacking yet simply present, watching. You wake with your heart racing. Now, what does such a dream mean in our context? The house is the psyche. The hallway is the path of consciousness narrowing toward truth. The portraits are ancestral patterns, collective, familial, inherited complexes. The locked door is repression, the barrier to the unconscious. Your palm opening, it suggests something crucial. The ego cannot unlock integration with intellect alone. It opens through direct contact, through lived experience, through feeling, through the body. The pool of dark water is the unconscious itself, deep, still, reflective. But you do not see yourself, you see others. This is exactly the empath's fate, to encounter other people's unconscious contents, to perceive what they do not admit, to see the submerged truth. And the snake? The snake is one of the oldest archetypes. It can represent wisdom, transformation, danger, libido, psychic energy itself. In this dream, the snake is the guardian of that knowledge. It warns you that seeing this truth is not free. It will change you. It will require you to shed skins, identities, roles, relationships. So the dream tells you your aura is rare because you have touched that pool. You have looked where others refuse to look, and now people feel it. They feel the snake behind your eyes, not literally, of course, but symbolically. They sense you have access to depths that could expose them, heal them, or destroy their masks. That is why they react before you speak. Do not underestimate this. Do not naively think, I'm just sensitive. Day pause 01. Sensitivity without integration is a wound. Sensitivity with integration becomes a force of nature, and forces of nature do not need to announce themselves. The ocean does not speak, yet you feel it. The night sky does not argue, yet it changes your mood. A locked door does not threaten you, yet your body senses what it contains. So it is with you. Now, let us be even more precise. What makes the empath integrated? It is not the absence of fear. It is not constant kindness. It is not spiritual positivity. Integration means you have begun to hold opposites. You have realized that you can love and also say no. You can understand and also walk away. You can see suffering and not sacrifice yourself. You can be soft and not be taken. You can be compassionate and still refuse participation in someone's unconscious drama. This holding of opposites is the birth of the self, not the ego self. But the deeper organizing center Jung called the self, when the self begins to emerge, it produces a quiet authority, not loud dominance, not performative confidence, but a psychic stability that others feel like gravity. And here, this is where the title becomes exact. People feel you before you speak, because the self speaks without words. The self radiates order into chaos, and chaos hates order until it becomes order. So your presence becomes a test. Those who are ready to individuate will feel drawn, relieved, inspired. Those who are invested in repression will feel exposed, irritated, threatened. Those who are addicted to projection will try to make you into something savior, enemy, judge, lover, mother, devil. And if you are not careful, you will be tempted to accept their roles again, because roles are familiar, and familiarity feels like safety even when it is poison. This is why the phenomenon is dangerous, obsessive, fated, as you said in your structure request. because it can shape destiny. If you misunderstand your aura, you will keep trying to shrink it to be acceptable. You will keep explaining, softening, apologizing. You will keep performing innocence so that others do not feel judged. But you cannot protect people from their own unconscious reaction to truth. And if you keep trying, you will lose your life. Yes, your life, because the integrated empath's task is not to become less felt, it is to become more real, to learn how to walk through the world as a mirror without becoming shattered by what it reflects. And in the next movement of our exploration, we must confront the hardest part: why your aura attracts resentment, obsession, and power games, and why the unintegrated will either worship you or punish you. Because the more coherent you become, the more you awaken the shadow in others. And the shadow, when awakened, does not politely introduce itself. It attacks, or it seduces, or it lies, or it clings. So if you have ever wondered why your quiet presence sometimes triggers chaos around you, why you can walk into a room calm and suddenly someone becomes dramatic, then you are already sensing the truth. Your aura is not causing it. Your aura is revealing what was already there. And revelation is always the beginning of transformation or war. Let us continue deeper into this, and I will show you how projection targets you, how persona reacts to you, how complexes try to recruit you into old roles, and how true Jungian integration turns your aura from a burden into a path, so you do not become a prisoner of being felt, but the master of what that feeling awakens in yourself and in others. You see, what most people call aura is usually nothing more than emotional contagion, an unprocessed mood that leaks from the body. It is the nervous laugh that begs for approval. It is the aggressive confidence that hides terror. It is the sweetness that conceals hunger. That kind of aura is loud, unstable, and easily manipulated. But the aura we are speaking of, the rare aura of the integrated empath, is something else entirely. It is not mood. It is not charm. It is not even kindness. It is coherence, and coherence is one of the most threatening forces in the psychological world, because it unmasks fragmentation without effort. That is why people feel you before you speak. Their unconscious meets your coherence and suddenly hears the noise inside itself. They may not know they are hearing it. They will call it intuition. They will call it vibes. They will say you are intense or mysterious. But what they are truly encountering is the gravitational pull of an inner life that has begun to organize itself around truth. And that begins to activate automatically the three great defensive systems of the unintegrated psyche: persona, projection, and complex possession. Let us begin with persona. The persona is not merely a mask, it is a survival technology. It is the face you were forced to build in order to be loved. It is the image you learned to wear to avoid punishment. It is the emotional costume that says, this is what you will accept, so this is what I will show you. For in ordinary social life, people meet each other persona to persona. Two masks greet, two masks negotiate, two masks trade politeness like currency. This is why so much human conversation feels empty. It is the sound of masks speaking to masks. But when you become integrated, the persona changes. You still have a social face. Yes, but it becomes transparent. It stops trying to hypnotize people into liking you. It stops begging to be seen as good, pure, harmless. It becomes a simple interface rather than a prison. And then you walk into a room of masks. You do not attack them, you do not criticize them. You simply arrive with less mask, and the unconscious of the other person panics because your presence asks, without words, why are you hiding? Now, if the other person is ready to grow, your presence feels like relief. They will breathe more deeply. Their shoulders will drop. They will speak more honestly around you without knowing why. They may tell you secrets. They may cry unexpectedly. They may feel safe not because you are weak, but because you are real. But if the other person is invested in their mask, your presence will feel like threat. They will start performing harder. They will start talking more, or making jokes, or becoming cold, or becoming flirty, or attempting dominance, anything to restore the old rhythm of persona-based control. This is why, in certain rooms, you will notice the strangest pattern. You say nothing, yet someone begins to explain themselves to you defensively, as if you accuse them, or someone becomes hostile toward you without a clear cause, or someone tries to impress you desperately. They are not reacting to your behavior. They are reacting to the collapse of their persona in your field. Because coherence is like a bright lamp. It reveals dust in the air that was always there, but invisible in darkness. Now let us go deeper. Projection. Projection is where your rare aura becomes truly fated. Because when you are integrated, you become like a clean mirror, and the clean mirror is unbearable to a psyche full of denied images. That is why people feel you before you speak. You become a surface onto which their unconscious immediately paints. And what does it paint? Exactly what they cannot bear to own. A person who has denied their cruelty will feel you as cruel even if you are gentle. A person who has denied their longing will feel you as tempting even if you are neutral. A person who has denied their shame will feel you as judgment even if you are kind. A person who has denied their spiritual hunger will feel you as too intense because your presence awakens what they have starved. So, you must understand this with precision. The integrated empath does not merely sense projection. The integrated empath attracts it. Not because you are arrogant, not because you want attention, but because the unconscious seeks resolution. The psyche is always trying to become whole. When a fragmented person encounters wholeness, even partial wholeness, it triggers an unconscious attempt at completion. And the easiest way for the unconscious to attempt completion is to throw the missing pieces onto you. This is why people become obsessed with you quickly sometimes. They do not know you, yet they feel they know you. They speak as if you are special. They idealize you. They see you as their destiny. But this is not love yet. This is projection. They are not seeing you. They are seeing the part of themselves they have lost. And because they cannot locate it inside themselves, they hallucinate it in you. This is why you have likely experienced the disturbing cycle of idealization and devaluation. Someone worships you, then punishes you. Someone says you are healing, then calls you selfish. Someone feels you are their home, then claims you are cold. Because their projection eventually fails, reality breaks the spell, You do something human, you set a boundary, you disappoint them, and suddenly their unconscious realizes, this is not my missing soul, this is a separate person. Well, and the ego cannot tolerate the pain of that collapse. So it converts disappointment into accusation. They blame you for not being the fantasy they invented, and so their love turns into rage. This is how projection creates tragedy, and this is why your aura feels dangerous. It attracts the unintegrated like fire attracts insects. And now we must speak of the third mechanism, complexes. A complex is not simply a wound, it is an inner personality formed around intense emotional charge, usually from childhood, trauma, or repeated relational pattern. And complexes recognize each other in the dark. Yes, this is crucial. The psyche has its own sense of smell. A wounded father complex will recognize a person who resembles father energy. A mother complex will recognize mother energy. A savior complex will recognize someone who looks like a patient. A victim complex will recognize someone who looks like a rescuer. And integrated empaths often have a powerful signature. They look like salvation to the wounded. Not because you promise it, but because your coherence feels like what they never had. So their complex rushes toward you like a starving animal toward food. And you feel it. You feel the hunger in their eyes. You feel the unspoken demand, fix me, stay, carry me, Ada's Reld. This is the empath's ancient curse, being mistaken for a psychic parent. This is where your destiny becomes most distorted if you do not remain conscious. Because if you confuse their complex hunger for love, you will step into the old role again. You will become the emotional caretaker. You will become the container. You will become the silent therapist, and you will call it devotion. But the integrated empath begins to see the pattern before it becomes bondage. They recognize the complex speaking through the person. They hear the hidden contract forming. They feel the role being assigned. And this is where your aura becomes terrifying to certain people. Because you do not accept the role. You smile, perhaps softly, but you do not surrender your boundaries. And the complex does not like boundaries. Complexes hate reality. They want repetition. They want the old wound to replay so it can feel familiar. So when you refuse, the complex panics and you witness something strange. The person changes. Their eyes change. Their tone changes. They become manipulative or cold or accusing or needy or cruel. You are witnessing possession. You are not speaking to the adult anymore. You are speaking to the complex, and this is why your aura is rare. Because integration gives you the capacity to see possession without being hypnotized by it. Most people get pulled into the drama. You begin to stand outside it still compassionate, still aware, but no longer inside the spell. And yes, this creates loneliness. Because the spell is social currency. Many relationships are built not on truth, but on mutual possession. Two wounded children clinging to each other's masks. When you stop clinging, the relationship collapses. And again, people will call you cold. Let them. They do not mean cold. I don't. They mean you are no longer available to my unconscious needs. When I twice too pleasant. Now, let us turn to the shadow dimension. Because the integrated empath's aura becomes rare precisely because you have begun to integrate shadow. Shadow integration is not becoming dark or edgy. Shadow integration is reclaiming disowned life. It is bringing back your anger so it can become discernment. It is bringing back your selfishness so it can become boundaries. It is bringing back your ambition so it can become purpose. It is bringing back your erotic energy so it can become vitality rather than seduction. It is bringing back your cruelty not to enact it, but to recognize you are capable of it, so you stop projecting it outward. This is the beginning of psychological adulthood, and psychological adulthood has a scent. Animals know it, children know it, narcissists know it, wounded lovers know it. They sense this person cannot be easily controlled. 2. They feel you before you speak because the shadow has made you less naive. Naivete is not innocence, it is unconsciousness. Your shadow integration ends unconsciousness. And this is precisely what threatens manipulative people. They survive on unconsciousness. They survive on your confusion, your guilt, your desire to be seen as good. The integrated empath no longer needs to be seen as good. They need to be real. And the moment you stop needing to be seen as good, guilt loses its power over you. This is why your aura feels like a locked door to certain people. They try the old keys: flattery, shame, pity, accusation, seduction, but the door does not open, and so they feel anxiety in your presence, because the part of them that seeks control cannot penetrate you. Now, let us use the second dream vignette, because dreams often dramatize this exact transformation. You dream you are walking in a labyrinth. The labyrinth is made of stone, ancient, damp. The walls are high and narrow, and you can barely see the sky. You hear footsteps behind you, but never see anyone. Sometimes you hear whispering, as if your name is being spoken. You keep turning corners, searching for an exit. Then you arrive at the center, and there is a pedestal with a small flame, just a single steady flame, protected by glass. Beside it is a bowl of water, and beside the bowl is a crown made of thorns, beautiful and terrifying. You stare at these objects, not knowing what to do. Then you hear a voice not from above, but from within the walls. If you take the flame, you will never be lost again. If you take the water, you will never burn again. If you take the crown, you will never be innocent again. Is recite I do, end quote. You wake trembling. Now listen, this dream is an image of individuation. The labyrinth is the psyche, especially the empathic psyche, where you have been trapped in other people's emotions, other people's demands, other people's stories. The footsteps behind you are your complexes chasing you: guilt, saviorhood, fear of rejection. The center of the labyrinth is the self. The flame is integrated consciousness, inner light that does not depend on approval. The water is emotional anesthesia, avoidance, dissociation, the temptation to feel nothing. The crown of thorns is the price of truth. Once you become conscious, you cannot return to innocent participation in unconscious games. What does an integrated empath choose? Not the water, because numbness is not freedom. It is death disguised as peace. They choose the flame. They accept burning. They accept discomfort, they accept loneliness, but they gain orientation, they stop being lost. And this is why, in waking life, people feel you before you speak. You are not lost anymore. And the lost are always stirred by the presence of someone who has direction. It makes them hope or hate. Now, we must bring in anima and animus, because your aura is also shaped by the inner opposite. If you are a man, the anima, your inner feminine, mediates emotion, intuition, symbolic perception. If you are a woman, the animus, your inner masculine, mediates clarity, logos, discernment, boundary. An empath often begins with one-sidedness. Too much anima without animus, or too much animus without anima. Too much anima without animus becomes emotional flooding, fusion, lack of boundaries. Too much animus without anima becomes coldness, rigidity, intellectual defense. Integration means the opposites begin to marry, and this marriage produces aura. When your inner feminine and inner masculine stop warring, your presence becomes whole, and wholeness is felt. It is felt as calm authority. It is felt as quiet sensuality. It is felt as I cannot read you easily, which is not secrecy but depth. It is felt as this person has a center, fant, and people who lack a center feel that as danger, because without a center, they are ruled by impulses, moods, social approval, so again they feel you before you speak. Now, let me show you the consequences if you do not recognize this. If you do not recognize what you carry, you will do one of two tragic things. You will either shrink or you will inflate. Shrinking means you will try to be less felt. You will become quieter than your soul. You will apologize for your depth. You will avoid eye contact. You will become agreeable to reduce tension. You will dull your light to prevent provoking envy or hostility. And this will slowly turn into depression, because you will be living as a ghost of yourself. Inflation means you will interpret your aura as superiority. You will begin to identify with being special, chosen, psychic, above others. You will secretly enjoy the effect you have, and that will attract the darkest projections and the worst possession, because inflation invites archetypal punishment. The psyche hates arrogance. The gods in us punish hubris. So the integrated path is neither shrink nor inflate. It is to stand in sober truth, to understand, yes, I have presence, yes, my coherence is felt, but this is not a trophy. It is a responsibility. I must not use it to control others, and I must not allow others to use it to control me. Whoa, this is individuation. Now, you may ask, how do you live with this aura without becoming isolated or attacked? You must learn the deepest skill of the integrated empath, withdrawing energy from projection. This is not a technique. It is a spiritual, psychological discipline. When someone projects onto you, you do not fight it. You do not explain yourself endlessly. You do not perform innocence. You do not try to make them understand. You simply refuse to carry what is not yours. You remain kind, but not porous. You remain present, but not available for possession. This is a subtle thing. It looks, externally, like calm, but internally, it is a firm refusal. I will not be recruited into your unconscious story, enquiest, and this refusal changes everything. Because projection requires participation. It requires you to react. It requires you to feel guilty. It requires you to defend. When you stop reacting, the projection collapses back onto them, and they feel uncomfortable because now they must face their own contents. This is why some people disappear from your life when you integrate. They do not leave because you did something wrong. They leave because you stop doing their inner work for them. You stop being their mirror that also comforts them. You became a mirror that reflects without soothing, and only the mature can tolerate such reflection. The immature will call it cold, so the integrated will call it freedom. Now let us hold three symbols, as promised, not as decoration but as living tools. The mirror, the labyrinth, the snake. The mirror is your presence, reflective, revealing. The labyrinth is the psychological world, confusion, roles, complexes. The snake is transformation, shedding skin, wisdom, danger. Your aura is rare because you carry all three simultaneously. You reflect truth, mirror. You have survived confusion, labyrinth, and you have shed skins, snake. People feel that even if they cannot articulate it, their body knows. That is why sometimes a stranger will trust you quickly, and why sometimes a stranger will dislike you instantly. They are not reacting to your words. They are reacting to an archetype awakened by your presence. And now, here is the most frightening truth I will give you today. When you become integrated, you become less controllable by collective norms. The collective thrives on sameness. The collective rewards those who perform the expected persona, but integration makes you unpredictable, not chaotic, but independent. You no longer follow emotional gravity blindly. You do not chase what everyone chases. You do not fear what everyone fears. And this independence makes your aura feel rare, because most people are still owned by the herd. So you become a sign of possibility, and possibility threatens mediocrity. This is why envy will sometimes rise around you like smoke, not because you boast, but because your existence reminds others of what they abandoned in themselves. They will call you too much, too much truth for a life built on avoidance, too much depth for a life built on distraction, too much integrity for a life built on performance. So again, they feel you before you speak. Now, in the next movement, we will go even deeper into the transformation path, the exact steps of Jungian integration that produce this aura, how you confront shadow without becoming bitter, how you dissolve savior complex without becoming indifferent, how you integrate power without becoming cruel, and how you speak, finally speak, without losing your quiet gravity. Because the integrated empath's rare aura is not meant to remain silent forever. It is meant to become conscious speech. Speech that does not seek approval. Speech that does not beg to be understood. Speech that emerges from the self And when that happens, you will discover something else. People felt you before you spoke, but after you speak, they will never be able to unfeel you again. And neither is your destiny. The rare aura of the integrated empath is not a decorative phenomenon. It is not a mystical accessory. It is an outcome, an effect of something painfully earned. Individuation. And individuation is not a nice journey. It is psychological disobedience. It is the refusal to remain a loyal servant of your complexes. So I want to take you now into the real mechanism, how exactly this aura is formed in the Jungian sense, what phases create it, and why once it is formed, it makes people feel you like weather. Because your aura is not merely sensed by intuition, it is sensed by the body of other people. Their nervous system reads you like a climate, and climate does not ask permission. It changes the room. This is why, for the integrated empath, the greatest temptation is to believe your gift is under control if you keep quiet. But quietness is not control. Silence can be the deepest form of hiding, and many empaths, especially those who have been punished for their light mistake, hiding for maturity. So we must speak bluntly. The integrated empath's aura is formed through three psychological conquests, not achievements, conquests, because you take something back that was stolen from you. You reclaim your boundaries, your sovereign perimeter, your shadow, your disowned power, your inner opposite, your missing axis. When these three come into alignment, the aura appears, not as magic, as inevitability. Let us begin with boundaries. Most people imagine boundaries as behavior, saying no, stepping away, refusing. That is only the outer skin. Boundaries begin deeper. A boundary is a psychic border, the line that separates what is yours from what belongs to the other. An unintegrated empath does not have this border. They have empathy, yes, but they have no sovereignty. They absorb, they fuse, they feel responsible, and because they feel responsible, they are easily recruited by other people's unconscious. The integrated empath becomes dangerous because they stop being recruitable. This is why your aura feels rare. It is the aura of a person who cannot be forced into emotional servitude. But to build this boundary, you have to survive guilt, and guilt is the empath's oldest leash. Look carefully. The world did not train you to have boundaries. It trained you to have explanations. When someone crosses your line, you are trained to explain kindly why it hurts you. When someone manipulates you, you are trained to prove your innocence. When someone disrespects you, you are trained to give them the benefit of the doubt. That is not virtue. That is conditioning. And this is one of the deepest Jungian truths. The empath often wears a holy persona to compensate for rejected shadow. The empath believes they must be gentle, understanding, forgiving always. But why? Because somewhere in childhood, or early love, or early social betrayal, you learned that your power was dangerous, your anger was punished, your needs were inconvenient, your truth created conflict. So you made a deal with life. I will be easy, I will be good, I will be agreeable to one. That deal is the beginning of your suffering, because the psyche is not designed to live without power. Without power, compassion becomes pathology. You become a lamp in a room full of thieves, and you call it love. So boundary is the first conquest. And when you conquer boundary, your aura changes immediately. You no longer leak desperation. You no longer leak the subtle invitation. Take more for meta. You no longer leak the unconscious signal. I will tolerate what I shouldn't. End quote. Instead, you emit something that people feel before words: finality, not cruelty, finality, the sense that you cannot be emotionally invaded. And this alone triggers reactions in people's unconscious, because the unintegrated person is always scanning. Who can I use? Who can I lean on? Who can I manipulate? Who can I guilt? Your aura becomes the scent of not me. In fact, and this is why manipulators dislike you instantly. Now we go to the second conquest, shadow. I want you to understand what shadow truly is, because most people misuse the term. Shadow is not only evil, shadow is everything you have been trained not to be. For an empath, the shadow often includes directness, selfishness, ambition, erotic confidence, authority, detachment, and perhaps the most forbidden, the willingness to disappoint people. Yes, that is a shadow for the empath, the ability to disappoint. Why? Because the empath has been addicted to being needed, not because you are vain, because being needed gave you safety. It gave you worth. It gave you identity. So when you integrate shadow, you integrate the power to withdraw your light without collapsing into guilt. This is what makes the aura rare, because most people's light is conditional. It is offered as bargaining. I shine so you will love me. Oh, but the integrated empath's light is no longer bargaining. It shines because it is, and it withdraws because it can. This produces what people call mysterious aura. But psychologically, it is simply non-attachment. Non-attachment is not indifference, it is clarity. It means you no longer confuse love with fusion. Now listen very carefully, because here the title becomes sharp. People feel you before you speak because your shadow is integrated enough that you no longer need to persuade them to like you. There is nothing to sell, no performance, no begging, just presence. And presence with integrated shadow feels like danger to the unintegrated because they cannot bribe you with approval. They cannot control you with disapproval. You are out of reach of their emotional economy, and your aura is the scent of that freedom. But shadow integration does not happen through reading books, or watching videos, or repeating affirmations. Shadow integration happens when you finally say, I see what you're doing, Haste too, and you do not soften it with a smile. You do not apologize for your perception. You do not dilute it. You say it calmly and cleanly. That moment is fire. That moment changes your aura forever, because your nervous system learns, I can survive conflict, I can survive displeasing others, I can survive being misunderstood. And the empath's greatest fear has always been misunderstanding. So when you survive that fear, you stop being owned by it. Now the third conquest, the inner opposite, anima animus. This is the deepest layer. Because many empaths are not merely sensitive, they are imbalanced. Some empaths have immense emotional perception, anima, but poor discernment, animus. They feel everything, but they cannot name it. They sense manipulation, but they cannot confront it. They intuit danger, but they rationalize it away. Other empaths have sharp discernment, animus, but suppressed feeling, anima. They can analyze everyone, but they cannot rest, they cannot receive, they cannot be held. Integration means the marriage of these inner energies. For a woman, animus integration means she gains inner authority without losing softness. For a man, anima integration means he gains emotional depth without losing structure. When this happens, your presence becomes whole, and wholeness is felt like gravity. People feel you before you speak because they cannot find an easy entry point into you. They cannot seduce your feelings while bypassing your discernment. They cannot flatter your logic while bypassing your heart. You are not divided, and division is how others enter us. Most manipulation succeeds through internal splits. If I can trigger your guilt, I bypass your boundaries. If I can trigger your desire, I bypass your wisdom. If I can trigger your fear, I bypass your truth. If we doubt, but integration seals those splits, so the aura becomes rare. Now, we have spoken of mechanisms. Let us now enter the realm of fate, because you asked that this be treated as obsessive, dangerous, and destined at the psychological level. Because once you carry this aura, life begins to sort people around you. This is not superstition, it is pattern. Your aura acts like a magnet, not to attract everyone, to reveal everyone. People who carry unintegrated shadow will either try to dominate you, try to seduce you, try to save you so they can own your gratitude, or try to smear you so others will not see what they fear. Because your presence exposes what they hide, and those who are ready to individuate will do something different. They will approach you with reverence, not worship. They will not rush to possess you. They will not demand your emotional labor. They will speak slowly with you, as if they are approaching a sacred site. This is how you can recognize maturity. Maturity does not cling. Maturity does not rush. Maturity can tolerate mystery. And this is what the integrated empath truly becomes. Not a healer of everyone, but a threshold, a doorway, a gate not everyone can pass. And that is not elitism. It is psychological truth. Now let us deepen the symbolism again, not as poetry, but as diagnosis. We have the mirror, the labyrinth, the snake. Now I add a fourth symbol, the locked door. Because integrated empaths often become a locked door, and this terrifies those who used to access you freely. When you were unintegrated, you were an open house. People entered, took warmth, left mess, returned again. You called it loyalty. Integration makes you a locked door, but not a hostile door, a sacred one, a door that opens only from the inside. This is why people feel you before you speak. They sense the door. They sense there will be no easy access, and their unconscious responds with either respect or rage. So, what are the consequences if you do not recognize your door? If you do not recognize the aura you carry, you will misinterpret reactions as personal. You will think, they hate me because I'm awkward. It's so. They love me because I'm special is no tend. They are nervous because I'm intimidating. I will do they. They are cold because I did something wrong. End quote. Most of the time, their reaction is simply an encounter with their own unconscious. And here is the Jungian discipline. You must stop personalizing the unconscious. That is the mark of integration. When someone projects onto you, you do not inflate and you do not shrink. You do not become seduced by admiration. You do not become crushed by criticism. You see the projection as weather passing through the room. You remain the mountain. This is why your aura grows, because you are no longer emotionally purchasable. Now I will tell you something that may sting because truth often does. Sometimes people feel you before you speak, not because you are harmless light, but because your integration has made you a predator to falsehood. Yes, a predator, not an aggressive predator, an archetypal one. There is an archetype in the psyche, the one who sees, the seer, the witness, the judge, not the moral judge, the psychological judge, the one whose gaze reveals. This archetype terrifies liars, manipulators, and performers. They may not know you are seeing them, but their body knows. They begin to sweat psychologically. They start over-explaining. They begin to create stories. They begin to control the narrative. They feel your gaze like fire. And that is why they try to attack your reputation. They sense, if this person speaks, my mask will burn. I flaw. So they try to make sure you never speak. They keep you busy being kind. They keep you trapped in being misunderstood. They keep you apologizing. This is why, in your evolution, you must learn the final step. Speech without leakage. Many empaths speak with leakage. They speak and they leak fear. They speak and they leak guilt. They speak and they leak the desire to be liked. The integrated empath speaks from the self, and speech from the self is quiet, but it lands like thunder. It does not argue. It does not plead. It does not defend. It states. This is why some people will tremble after you say one sentence. Because you did not only speak to their mind, you spoke to the part of them that has been hiding, and the hiding part hates being named. Now, let me show you the transformation path more concretely, without listing, without bulleting, but as a living flow you can feel. You become integrated when you stop treating your sensitivity as obligation. You stop treating your perception as guilt. You stop treating other people's emotions as assignments. You begin to ask, what belongs to me? Not, what do they need? This is the pivot from empath as servant to empath as sovereign. And sovereignty is aura. Sovereignty is what people feel before you speak. And in the next movement, we must go even deeper into the final reframe. Why this aura is not meant to isolate you, but to position you, how to choose relationships that can tolerate your coherence, how to recognize when you are being projected upon, and withdraw energy without cruelty, how to integrate power without becoming cold. Because yes, there is a risk. Some empaths integrate shadow and become bitter. They call bitterness boundaries. They call numbness strength. I makes us. That is not integration. That is armor. Integration remains soft yet uninvadable. It remains loving yet unpossessable. It remains human yet unbuyable. This is the rare aura, not perfection, but wholeness. And when you carry wholeness, people feel you before you speak, because wholeness announces itself to the unconscious like a bell in the night. There is a moment quiet, almost unnoticeable, when you realize the most dangerous thing about your presence is not what you say. It is what you refuse to say. Not in the childish sense of withholding, not as manipulation, but as something deeper. You no longer rush to soothe other people's unconscious discomfort. You no longer scramble to make it okay when the room becomes tense. You no longer volunteer your innocence as a sacrifice to their suspicion. You let the discomfort exist, and that single act, letting the discomfort exist, changes everything. Because most people spend their entire lives trying to escape their own discomfort, and they build relationships around that escape. They choose friends who distract them, lovers who anesthetize them, work that keeps them moving, noise that keeps them numb. They cling to performance because performance is predictable, and predictability feels like safety. Then you enter and you bring something rare, the ability to stay present when the psyche wants to flee. You do not attempt to rescue the room from itself. You do not rush to apologize for being felt, so the room begins to feel itself. And that is why people feel you before you speak, because your presence is not merely sensitivity, it is containment. You have become a vessel large enough to hold paradox without spilling. And the moment a person meets someone who can hold paradox, their own inner contradictions begin to show themselves. The hidden war inside them steps forward like a figure coming out of fog. I want you to see this not as energy, but as a precise psychological fact. Integration gives you containment capacity. The ego becomes less reactive. The shadow becomes less projected. The persona becomes less rigid. The complex loses the ability to hijack your voice, and this inner ordering creates an external effect. Coherence transmits itself through silence. It is felt like the steady presence of deep water. Even if no one sees the bottom, they know it is there. Now you must understand the next secret. The integrated empath's aura is not only attractive, it is also diagnostic. It reveals truth in people before they have decided what story to tell. When you are unintegrated, you enter relationships as hope. You want to believe, you want the best, you want harmony. Your intuition whispers warnings, but you rationalize them. You do not want to seem harsh. You do not want to become the kind of person who is too guarded, so you override the signal. That is not compassion, that is fear. Integration changes this. The integrated empath becomes someone whose intuition no longer needs permission. It does not wait until things are proven. It does not require catastrophe to be validated. It simply sees quietly, without drama. And because you do not argue with what you see, your body becomes aligned with truth. Your eyes look differently. Your voice carries a calm finality. You no longer speak as someone seeking agreement. You speak as someone describing reality. And this terrifies certain people. Not because you are cruel, but because you are untemptable. The unintegrated person wants you to be temptable. They want your truth to be negotiable. They want your perception to be corruptible by flattery, guilt, seduction, or pity. They want you to doubt yourself. They want to bargain with your clarity. But you are becoming the kind of person who does not bargain. So they feel you before you speak, the way an animal senses a predator, not because you hunt them, but because you cannot be fooled by camouflage. Now let us enter the most delicate terrain, the place where many integrated empaths misunderstand their own fate, the relationship between aura and power. You may not seek power, but power will come to meet you. Not institutional power, not social status, I mean the psychological power of influence, the quiet ability to shift a room, the ability to make people confess, the ability to make people reveal themselves, the ability to make truth surface. This is real power, and you have tasted it, even if you have not named it. You have seen it in small moments. You ask one simple question, and suddenly the other person becomes defensive. You say nothing, and yet they begin to explain. You remain calm, and they become chaotic. You walk away without anger, and they chase with panic. You set one boundary, and suddenly they accuse you of cruelty. These are not random behaviors. These are the reactions of a psyche meeting power it cannot dominate. So your aura is not rare because it is pretty. It is rare because it is dangerous to unconsciousness, and the world is built on unconsciousness. Many systems, families, workplaces, friendships depend on a certain level of blindness to function. Certain lies must remain unspoken. Certain dynamics must remain unnamed. Certain people must remain protected by the collective denial. The integrated empath disrupts this simply by being present. And this is where your destiny becomes paradoxical. The more integrated you become, the more you become both needed and resisted. People want what you carry, but they fear what it costs. They want your calm, but not your truth. They want your compassion, but not your boundaries. They want your light, but not the shadow it reveals. So they will try to extract the pleasant part and reject the rest. And if you are not careful, you will cooperate. This is one of the last seductions of the empath, the desire to remain lovable, not the mature desire to be loved, but the compulsive desire to be harmless. Harmlessness is not virtue, it is self-erasure. You were trained, perhaps in childhood, perhaps in love, to be harmless, because harmlessness reduced conflict. Harmlessness earned approval. Harmlessness allowed you to survive in unstable emotional climates. You learned that your safety depended on being easy to digest. But integration makes you hard to digest. Not abrasive, but profound, and profound people are always misinterpreted by shallow perception. So the integrated empath must develop a new spiritual muscle, the ability to be misread without collapsing into correction. This is extraordinary, because the unintegrated empath dies from misinterpretation. They will explain and explain until their soul is exhausted. They will justify their motives. They will prove their goodness. They will write essays of self-defense in their mind. They will revisit conversations like rituals of self-torture. Integration ends this. You stop needing to be understood by everyone. And the moment you stop needing to be understood by everyone, your aura becomes even rarer, because it no longer contains the scent of pleading. People feel a person who is not begging for agreement. They may call it arrogance, they may call it coldness, but it is neither. It is freedom from projection. When you stop begging, you stop inviting the world to negotiate your identity. Now, let us speak of how to live with this aura without isolating yourself into a private monastery of superiority. Because there is a shadow to integration too, and if you do not watch it, you will become what you once feared, someone detached, unreachable, spiritually proud, emotionally unavailable, calling numbness strength. So, this is not integration. This is a new persona, a persona of the healed one. I will peace, and it is as dangerous as the old persona of the good one. Forced. So, how does the integrated empath remain soft without becoming porous? Through conscious relationship to the shadow. The shadow does not disappear when you integrate it. It becomes your ally. It becomes a quiet blade at your hip. You do not swing it at everyone. You do not use it to cut unnecessarily, but you know it is there. And because you know it is there, you do not fear conflict. You do not fear your own anger. You do not fear your own capacity to say no. A porous empath has no blade. They use softness to survive. Their softness becomes submission. A defended empath has only blade. They cut everything. Their blade becomes cruelty. An integrated empath has both softness and blade, and can choose. This choice is sovereignty. Sovereignty is aura. And once you have sovereignty, you must choose carefully the kind of relationships that can exist near it. Because not everyone can. Some people can only love you if you remain a role. The therapist, the rescuer, the confessor, the endless listener, the light in their darkness. But if your aura is changing, it means your role is dying. And role death feels like betrayal to those who benefited. So you must learn to recognize the 3 types of people your aura will magnetize again. Not as a list, but as living archetypes you will feel. The first is the devourer. This person enters your field hungry. They may appear wounded, tragic, misunderstood. They may speak of pain. They may praise your kindness. They will call you rare. They will say, "I've never met anyone like you. Phoenicians adore." But beneath this is hunger and unconscious demand. Feed me, hold me, stay, sayings of. The devourer is not evil. They are possessed by a complex, often an abandonment complex. They do not want love. They want guarantee. They do not want intimacy. They want fusion. And because your aura feels safe, they mistake you for a mother archetype, someone who will not leave. If you do not remain conscious, you will fall into the savior complex again. You will become their emotional parent. Your aura will dim, and when you finally collapse, they will call you cruel for having limits. The second is the worshipper. This person idealizes you. They treat you as special. They speak of destiny. They cannot tolerate ambiguity. They want to claim you emotionally. Sometimes, spiritually, they may flatter you with language of soul recognition. But worship is not love. Worship is fear with perfume. The worshipper is terrified of their own emptiness, and your coherence feels like rescue. They place you on a pedestal because they cannot yet hold their own self. And pedestals are dangerous. They turn you into an idol. And idols must either shine forever or be destroyed. When you inevitably disappoint them, as all humans do, the worshipper's love can turn into hatred. This is the projection collapse, and it can be violent, not physically always, but psychologically, smearing, accusations, sudden withdrawal. The third is the rival. This person senses your aura as threat. They may compete subtly. They may undermine you socially. They may mock your depth. They may provoke you to see if you will react. They may attempt to humiliate you so your coherence collapses into defensiveness. The rival is often carrying a rejected shadow. They envy what you embody: calm, integrity, sovereignty. Your mere existence becomes an insult to their unresolved fragmentation. So they try to prove you are not real. They want to see you fall into emotional chaos, because that would relieve them. It would mean you're not different, you're not whole, you're just like me. And well, now, an integrated empath does not become paranoid about these archetypes. They simply see them, and the seeing is enough, because you no longer need to fight. You simply do not enter contracts with those who cannot tolerate sovereignty. And this changes your fate. Yes, fate. Because Jung understood that when you do not integrate the unconscious, you meet it as destiny. You meet it in repeated relationships. You meet it in repeated betrayals. You meet it as the same story, wearing different faces. The integrated empath begins to reverse this law. You stop meeting your unconscious as destiny and begin meeting it as choice. You begin to say, no, not this again, and because your no is real, your life reorganizes. This is the true meaning of the rare aura. It is not that you become admired, it is that you become unrepeatable. You no longer live in loops. You no longer live in labyrinths with the same monsters. You still have suffering, yes, but your suffering becomes meaningful. It becomes evolutionary rather than repetitive. Now, I want to bring you to the deepest reframe, the one that will change how you relate to your own presence forever. You think the integrated empath's aura is something that belongs to you, but in Jungian truth, it belongs to the self. It is not your ego shining. It is the psyche becoming whole through you. So your aura is not a personal possession. It is a call to responsibility. Because when the self begins to emerge, it asks for a life aligned with it. And if you refuse, the psyche punishes you not morally, but psychologically. You will feel fatigue when you betray yourself. You will feel anxiety when you shrink. You will feel depression when you live out of alignment. These are not symptoms alone. They are signals that you are drifting from the path of individuation. So the integrated empath becomes someone who cannot lie comfortably anymore. This is a blessing and a curse. You cannot pretend. You cannot tolerate inauthentic intimacy. You cannot accept shallow contracts. Your aura becomes rare because you are no longer available to live half a life. And that is why people feel you. Because half-living people feel threatened by full living. Now, The final movement must be this: how to step into this aura without fear, without hiding, without inflating, how to become fully yourself in speech and action, because the integrated empath does not remain a silent mirror forever. At some point, you must become a voice, not a loud voice, a true voice. And here is the final paradox. Your voice will be most powerful when it speaks least, but speaks from the deepest place. That place is not the ego. It is not the persona. It is not the desire to be right. It is the self. And speech from the self has a different quality. It does not argue. It reveals. It does not attack. It names. It does not convince. It resonates. When you speak like this, people will feel you before you speak, and after you speak, they will feel as though something in them has been seen by a god. This is not mystical exaggeration. It is archetypal reality. The integrated empath becomes an emissary of the self, not of morality, not of social approval, but of inner truth. And this is why your aura is rare, because inner truth is rare. Most people live by outer truth, appearances, stories, roles, achievements, belonging. Inner truth is costly. It demands sacrifice. It demands loneliness. It demands shedding skins like a snake. It demands walking the labyrinth until you find the center. It demands staring into the mirror until you can no longer blame others for what you see. You have done some of this. That is why your presence has weight. That is why strangers reveal themselves around you. That is why lovers become intense too quickly. That is why manipulators dislike you before you speak. That is why you feel as if you walk with invisible fire. Now let me end this movement by placing a final image into your psyche, so you carry it like a compass. Imagine you are standing at the edge of the night sea. The ocean is black, vast, the moon is thin, the wind is cold. Behind you is a locked door set into stone, an ancient door. And in your hand is a mirror, heavy, old. At your feet lies the shed skin of a snake proof you have changed. And somewhere in the distance, far out on the water, a single flame flickers like a lighthouse. You are alone, but you are not lost. This is what integration looks like. Not being surrounded, not being praised, not being understood by everyone, but being oriented, being aligned, being whole enough to walk without needing permission. And when you walk like that, people feel you before you speak, because you are carrying what they have abandoned in themselves. The possibility of becoming one. There is a particular kind of silence that appears only after a person has stopped begging life to be gentle. It is not the silence of fear. It is not the silence of punishment. It is not the silence of withdrawal. It is the silence of a psyche that has finally accepted the cost of truth and has decided to pay it. When you carry this kind of silence, you become what most people cannot name: a living threshold. And thresholds do not need to speak loudly. They simply exist. They separate one world from another. On one side, the old life roles, masks, compulsions, invisible contracts. On the other side, the real life discernment, sovereignty, symbolic meaning, individuation. The integrated empath stands at that boundary. So when you enter a room, You are not just entering a room, you are bringing the boundary with you. And the unconscious of others recognizes boundaries the way the skin recognizes cold immediately. Without intellect, this is the final secret behind your rare aura. You have become a boundary that cannot be negotiated. Not in a rigid way, not in a proud way, in a natural way, like a mountain. The mountain does not hate the traveler, but it will not become flat so the traveler can feel comfortable. And because most people have never become a mountain inside themselves, they feel yours, they feel you before you speak. Now we come to the final transformation, the one that turns this aura from a painful destiny into a conscious path. Up to now, your sensitivity may have felt like a strange fate, reactions you did not ask for, attachments you did not invite, resentments you could not predict, admiration that felt too fast, hostility that felt too irrational. But individuation demands that you stop living this as fate. Individuation demands that you turn it into meaning. Meaning is not explanation, meaning is orientation. Meaning is the capacity to see your life not as random suffering, but as the psyche shaping you into something. And what is it shaping you into? Not a saint, not a savior, not an emotional nurse for the wounded. It is shaping you into a person who can hold the tension of opposites without collapsing. This is the hallmark of the self. So your aura is rare because you have begun to master something most people never learn. You can hold light without denying darkness. You can hold softness without surrender. You can hold empathy without self-erasure. You can hold power without cruelty. That is integration. And integration changes the way you love. Let us speak of love now, because this is where the integrated empath's path becomes most misunderstood. People think integration makes you distant. They think you become colder. They think you stop caring, censored. You begin to love differently. Before integration, you loved through fusion. You loved through sacrifice. You loved through hunger to be needed, hunger to be chosen, hunger to be safe. You called that love, but it was not love. It was survival wearing perfume. Integration does not kill love. It kills survival love. It kills the unconscious bargains you used to call devotion. It kills the part of you that equated pain with loyalty. And when that part dies, your aura changes again because you stop being emotionally available to those who offer chaos as intimacy. You begin to crave a different type of connection, one that can survive truth. This is why integrated empaths often become frighteningly selective. Not because they become arrogant, but because their nervous system has become intelligent. They no longer mistake intensity for depth. They no longer mistake chemistry for destiny. They no longer mistake someone's confession for sincerity. They no longer mistake apology for transformation. They stop being seduced by words because they have learned to read the unconscious. They have learned to read pattern, and once you can read pattern, you cannot unsee it. You cannot return to innocence. This is why the crown of thorns in the dream was so accurate. Consciousness is costly. It destroys your ability to pretend, but in exchange, it gives you the greatest gift, freedom from repetition. And this is where we must speak of the empath's oldest trap, the savior complex. You see, an empath who is not integrated often carries an unconscious fantasy. If I love deeply enough, I will heal them. If I understand enough, they will change. If I endure enough, they will finally see my value. I thank in, this is not love. This is a childhood spell. It comes from the child who believed, if I become good enough, my parents will become safe. So, this fantasy is the origin of the empath's suffering. And it is precisely what manipulators exploit. They offer you just enough potential, just enough pain, just enough promise. They keep the fantasy alive, and you sacrifice your life to keep believing. Integration ends the savior fantasy, not with bitterness, with clarity. You finally understand you are not here to rescue anyone from their own shadow. You are here to stop abandoning yourself. And the moment you stop abandoning yourself, you stop attracting people who need you to abandon yourself. This is not mystical. It is psychological selection. Your aura changes because your unconscious contracts change. You no longer broadcast, I will carry you, you broadcast, I will meet you, but I will not lose myself, unquote. And this changes who approaches you. Now, here is the final, uncomfortable truth. The integrated empath becomes a kind of test for others, not intentionally, but inevitably. Your presence forces the other person to confront their own inner truth. Around you, people can no longer hide easily behind roles. A narcissistic person feels exposed. A wounded person feels hungry. A mature person feels invited. And this means your life will not be filled with casual relationships. Not anymore. Integration reduces quantity and increases essence. And this is where loneliness often comes. But loneliness is not always a sign of failure. Sometimes loneliness is the psyche clearing space. The old crowd falls away because the new world requires different companions. Not better companions, different. More conscious, more capable of intimacy, more capable of respect. Now, let us speak of what this rare aura truly is in symbolic language. It is not light, it is not darkness, it is twilight. Twilight is the symbol of integration when day and night are both present. When the world is neither fully illuminated nor fully hidden, when shadows appear, but the path is still visible. When boundaries blur, yet forms emerge. This is the integrated empath's world. You see both sides. You see the persona and the wound behind it. You see the charm and the hunger behind it. You see the kindness and the manipulation behind it. You see the praise and the envy behind it. You see the love and the possession behind it. And because you see both sides, you cannot be easily lied to. That is why people feel you as rare. Most people see only one side, the surface. They are dazzled by masks. They are fooled by performance. They are seduced by words. You, however, have become twilight. You see the shape of the shadow, and the shadow hates being seen, but the shadow also longs to be seen. This is the paradox that makes your aura so magnetic. You awaken both fear and desire in the unconscious of others. They fear your perception. They desire your wholeness. So they approach you with mixed impulses, attraction and hostility, admiration and sabotage, confession and defense. And if you do not understand this, you will misinterpret human behavior as personal cruelty. But once you understand it, you stop taking it personally. You become calmer, and your calm becomes even rarer. Now, how do you live this calm in a world that tries to pull you back into reaction? By practicing the most advanced psychological discipline, non-participation in unconscious drama. This does not mean you become distant. It means you stop feeding the complex. People will try to provoke you. They will try to guilt you. They will try to make you defend yourself. They will try to pull you into arguments where the real issue is never spoken. They will try to make you play, and you will feel the temptation because you still have a nervous system, still have history, still have old wounds, but you will begin to recognize the signature of drama, urgency without truth. Drama always feels urgent, but it is rarely truthful. Truth feels quiet. It does not need urgency. So the integrated empath learns to move toward quiet truth and away from urgent drama. And this alone transforms your fate, because drama thrives on your attention. Projection thrives on your reaction. Complexes thrive on your guilt. But if you stop feeding them, they starve. And when they starve, they collapse back into the person who carries them. And that is where the real work must happen, inside them, not inside you. This is liberation. Now the final reframe, the one that closes the entire lecture like a door clicking shut. You have been taught to believe that your aura is a burden, that being felt is dangerous, that being intense is risky, that being present makes you a target. And yes, there is truth in this, but here is the deeper truth. People feel you before you speak because you have become what they have forgotten exists. A human being with a center, a human being who is not owned by the crowd, a human being who can hold contradiction without lying, a human being who has touched the unconscious and survived. You are rare not because you are lucky. You are rare because you have paid for coherence with pain. You have walked through the labyrinth. You have stared into the mirror. You have shed skins like a snake. You have carried fire without letting it turn into destruction. That is why you have an aura. That is why you are felt. And now, the final demand of individuation. Do not shrink it. Do not weaponize it. Do not worship it. Serve it. Let it guide you toward truth. Let it teach you where you belong and where you do not. Let it reveal who is ready and who is not. Let it become a compass, not a cage. And if someone fears you, let them. Fear is not always about you. Sometimes fear is simply the shadow feeling the presence of light it cannot control. If someone admires you, stay sober. Admiration can be projection. Stay human. If someone hates you, do not collapse. Hatred is often the shadow defending itself against exposure. Remain calm. And if someone loves you with maturity, receive it. Because the integrated empath is not meant to live alone in a tower of insight. You are meant to become a living bridge between worlds, between unconscious and conscious, between shadow and light, between pain and meaning. That is what the self is creating through you. So yes, people feel you before you speak. But the real question is not why they feel you. The real question is, will you finally feel yourself fully without apology? Because the day you stop apologizing for your depth is the day your aura stops being a burden. It becomes destiny, conscious destiny, the kind that no longer repeats old stories, the kind that no longer signs hidden contracts, the kind that no longer trades soul for belonging. It becomes the quiet authority of a whole person. And once you become whole, you do not need to chase anything. You become the place where truth gathers. You become the doorway. You become the mirror. You become the flame. You become the night sea that does not beg the waves to be gentle. You simply are. And in that being, the world will always feel you before you speak.